about the idea of a religious spirit. Very often in contemporary churches, particularly in Pentecostal or charismatic stream churches, those at the very least, the types of churches that believe in the discerning of spirits. At times use the word religious spirit. Now, I do believe in the discerning of spirits. Um, but these types of churches, the point I'm making is these types of churches very often use the term religious spirit. Such and such has a religious spirit. What does that mean? The term refers to either a Christian or a non-Christian who pursues laws and rules that are redundant to the Christian faith. They are not necessary to the Christian faith, such as, let's say, not working on a Sunday or not buying bread on a Sunday. That then is seen to be religion. And for many uh, churches or many congregations, that is a big no-no because it sort of, in a way, is a slap in the face of Christ who offered his sacrifice to us, and that we can accept that through His grace. It's our faith, but it's His grace that makes that possible for us. So they say, well, look, are you trying to work your way towards heaven, which is not the right way of approaching it? And they say the reason why you do that is because you have a religious spirit. There is a spirit in you that compels you to pursue laws and rules, etc., etc. All right. So it's focusing on the wrong things. It's not necessarily wrong altogether, although it may be wrong altogether or also, but it is at least focusing on the wrong thing, is majoring on the minors. So a biblical example may be where Jesus, in Matthew 23:23, and we have a look here, where he says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and peace. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone." So he's essentially accusing them of a wrong priority. And a religious spirit seems to do exactly the same thing. It is the wrong priority. So in Christianity, in these streams of churches, at least in Christianity, the objections to religion are that salvation cannot be earned, that religion compels you to pursue certain rules, all right, and that faith is paramount. A, salvation cannot be earned. B, faith is paramount. All right. So anything that challenges that idea is then put under the category as working your way towards heaven, which is, accounted to a religious spirit very often. All right. So this is likely because the Pharisees themselves were very observant of the law, and they represented a false kind of faith. All right. So they led a lot of people astray because they looked the part, they looked very religious, but they were leading them astray into the wrong way of doing things because you cannot work your way to heaven. All right. But nowadays, we often hear that. We often hear people being accused of having a religious spirit. Um, they could, they could be pursuing any kind of standard in church. All right. Let's say it's a thing around communion. Should you have a cup, or should you have lots of different small cups? One big cup or lots of small different cups? And there would be arguments back and forth. Which cup is right? And so people would put that down to a religious spirit, and they would say it doesn't matter. It's what you mean in your heart. That's the real thing. That is true. It's absolutely correct. However, God does have certain unmovable or immovable standards. All right. And to confuse the idea that you cannot work your way to heaven with the idea that God doesn't have any standards is error. That there's a big problem, right? Let me give you an example. For instance, God has a standard with respect to truthful speaking. If He did not have a standard, then Ananias and Sapphira lying to the Holy Spirit would not have been a problem, but it was. And so we see that they had in Acts 5 here. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and keep back the price of the land for yourself? And as we know, they died. That was a consequence. It was an example to us that God has a standard, all right? It's not a religious thing to be pursuing that standard. God has an immovable standard, all right? At the same time, we have this example in 1 Corinthians 11 where it talks about eating and using communion in the right way. And Paul says there, well, many of you have died, have become sick and died because they have not used communion in the right way. That's not a religious spirit driving you to pursue a right standard. It is God's immovable standard in that respect. So you have to be very careful when people accuse others willy-nilly of having a religious spirit when really what they're trying to do is honor God. So what a religious spirit does not do is it does not honor God. What a right attitude to God does is it honors Him in all circumstance. All right. So when people have a right fear of God or a right reverence of God, they want to do things right by God. All right. And to then be accused of having a religious spirit because you want to do things right, that is error. So be careful when people say religious spirit, when people accuse others of religious spirit because they want to do things right by God, because they want to honor God. These are the ones, ironically, that are the ones that are not working in a spirit of faith. They are, in fact working, as I see it, in a spirit of rebellion because they are not interested in pursuing God in the way He wants to be pursued, like not lying to Him, like using communion in the right way. That's His standard. That's a standard that He set. And they're not interested in pursuing Him in the way He wants to be pursued. They're interested in the way they want to pursue Him. It is their way and not His way. So, to the contrary, these are people operating very possibly in a rebellious spirit. It's not you operating in a religious spirit, it's them operating in a rebellious spirit. And that obviously is a problem.